Ladies, gentlemen, and Nightfarers of all ages, we're back in business and we are eating good. It's time for the Forsaken Hollows DLC to enter Elden Ring Nightreign and give it an infusion of new content, including 2 new Nightfarers, 2 new major end of expedition bosses, which normally we'd call Nightlords, but the terminology for the new ones is seemingly different, and then also a full-on new Shifting Earth, as well as some new other additions as well. And for the most part, the easy way to look at this is it's like the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion for Nightreign. We're getting a fair bit of stuff from that expansion for regular Elden Ring, though seemingly not the new weapon types or in fact any new weapons, as we haven't seen any new weapons in any of the preview footage that's been released so far. Nothing has been mentioned in interviews, and of course it's possible that they just aren't telling us about some new stuff, but I feel like if there were new weapons, they'd probably be pretty vocal about it, so we're assuming that there isn't as of this moment. So today we're going to go over everything that we found out about this DLC before its official release time, and how to get yourself situated as best as possible so you can get into the meat of this new stuff as quickly as you can. First things first, the release date is December 4th. That means that the release of the DLC is probably a lot closer than you think, depending on if you're playing on console or PC, as this here is the full list of global release timings, and basically for consoles it's almost entirely midnight in your local region, with the exception of Brazil, the Central and Pacific North American time zones as well, which are slightly off of that, and then for PC it's mostly just the equivalent time of 8 AM Japan Standard Time. As well, it should be mentioned before people get their hopes up on this specific part of it all, there doesn't seem to be any new weapon types or even any new weapons to begin with as part of the DLC. It of course isn't fully confirmed yet. No one has directly said that there won't be anything new, but there are no new weapons in the trailer. There were no new weapons seen in any of the early preview footage gathered by media outlets, and so it seems about 99% likely that there won't be any new weapons at all. However, there are some people that I've seen say that there might be new weapons, but they're just making them available to all players, not part of the DLC. So what if it's just part of the patch that will happen on DLC launch day rather than being part of the DLC itself, technically speaking? To put it simply, I highly doubt that will happen. I think if we were to get new weapons, we would have seen them at some point before now because they want to hype them up and use those to engage players and make them want to play. But if anything properly new does get added as part of the patch itself, we will leave a pinned comment under this video. That said, in-game there are some requirements to access the new Bane bits of content and actually sort of quote-unquote begin the DLC. First, for the new characters, you need to have defeated the first expedition and taken down Gladius as a Nightlord. Very low bar to entry, but it does bear mentioning of course. Once you've done that, or for most of us, if you have already done that, you'll be able to talk to the Iron Menial NPC, who will send you to the Small Jar Bazaar NPC in turn. This will essentially begin the unlocking phase for the DLC. For the new expedition target, so the new actual end of expedition bosses, which seemingly are going to be called Abominations now instead of Nightlords, the one that we know a little bit more about is these 7 ladies. The official Nightreign website mentions that one of the new end bosses will be called the Balancers, and so logically with that being a plural name as well, we're thinking these 7 ladies are going to be the boss of the Balancers expedition, with that not being their actual boss name, but the actual name of the expedition. Footage of this fight was not revealed early, but with slight spoiler warning here, you want to skip ahead around 15 seconds if you don't want to know anything about this fight, but we do know what their fight flow is sort of like. Again, final warning here to skip ahead, but the first phase you fight all 7 of these at the same time. They have some area of effect attacks that you have to worry about, but it's mostly just trying to overwhelm you with how many of them there are. The second phase, they all sort of reform into one main big boss enemy that you then have to fight in a more normal manner. We've also seen a glimpse of a new big boss who got a lot more vague of a tease than that, who looks essentially like a giant dragonkin soldier with a big mace or hammer of some sort of his actual weapon in his right hand. The battlefield of the fight just looks like it would be covered in statuses as well. My gut reaction is to say that this guy is probably like a living swamp and he's going to have status effects guaranteed. Probably Scarlet Rot is my best guess, but that's partially just because I'm really hoping it's not full-on Death Blight instead, which I think is definitely a possibility. But I could imagine this guy just having an absolute beautiful spectacle of a second phase at the very least. Outside of that then, some other bosses that we have seen confirmed: Demon Princes, the Demon in Pain and Demon from Below from Dark Souls 3's Ringed City DLC. These will be returning as a Night 1 boss pool enemy. Artorias from the original Dark Souls DLC will be returning as a Night 2 boss pool enemy. Outside of that, we've seen brief footage of the dancing lion from Shadow of the Erdtree in a sort of Colosseum arena looking area that's definitely new. We've seen the Curseblade and Divine Beast warrior enemies from Shadow of the Erdtree as a combo for a night boss encounter. We also saw Mohg from Elden Ring itself as a night boss just called Lord of Blood, which is also awesome to see. As well, on the note of bosses, as these are basically bonus boss fights, they've added in 2 new invasions at least, which are the red circle events that pop up while playing. The ones that we know about for sure are for Gladius, which has you go against just one of the 3 dogs with the sword, and then also one for Caligo, where he will just emit a frosty miasma over a large portion of the map until you go find him and defeat him. Aside from that, some general new enemy types will be in the game, like Mesmer's Fire Knights and the generic Mesmer soldiers from Shadow of the Erdtree as well as examples. We've got new points of interest, so new entire sort of activity types for lack of a better term, and these are going to be the swamps and the forges. Swamps are a classic in the Soulsborne series, of course, and there are various styles of this swamp type location being added here. The people who played mentioned finding sleep swamps, poison swamps, madness swamps, and scarlet rot swamps all separately, and they mentioned them very specifically. The people who played said it felt like a late day 1 type activity, not something that you do right at the start of the expedition, but level 4 or 5 or so, it might be something to start consider having a go at. Then the other main new point of interest type are forges. These are like small villages or towns with a boss inside of them, and there's a forge inside of them too. Forges allow you to re-roll the Ash of War on a weapon that you have that has customizable Ashes of War. They don't seem to work for stabs or seals to give them different spells, and logically they shouldn't work for unique weapons either, but this can definitely get you some sort of weapon upgrade if you get lucky and get something that's actually helpful. Then we should talk about the brand new Shifting Earth, known as the Great Hollow, and this is a really big deal that we still only know a limited amount about right now. The old original Shifting Earths basically took up one corner of the map, or in the case of the crater, just right up the top of the middle of it, and they completely changed that one section of the map and changed how you interact with the map as a result. The Great Hollow, which is again something that people were told they could not share footage of, so we only have the stuff from the trailer, but they were told that they could talk about it. And the big thing that I want to drive home here is they said that this felt like it was essentially a whole new map. Like, it's not on the scale of the other Shifting Earths, it is much, much, much more impactful. The other ones are only slight changes. This is essentially a wholly different map, and that does line up with the very limited footage that was shown of this in the trailer, as it does look absolutely massive in its range of effect. They mentioned it also just made the game way more vertical. Instead of large areas of just flat land, there was just endless opportunities to either drop down to lower areas or jump up to new areas too. The description of the actual Shifting Earth mechanic itself is that as you move around the area, you need to find and destroy crystals around the map, and if you do that, then you can go to the big crystal in the center. They also mentioned a debuff called Crystal Curse that cuts your maximum health in half while it's active, and you lose that debuff by doing the Shifting Earth objectives, somewhat similar to the Rotted Wood Shifting Earth with all of the scarlet rottiness. Outside of that, for general game editions, there are some new relic effects, and take this with a grain of salt as it is a translation of spoken word, and I don't know how accurate it is, but there was a stream done by Famitsu in Japanese where they got to play the game early, and they said something along the lines of new relic effects that can change starting spells, meaning for the Nightfarers that start with casting implements, so staff or seal, we would be able to get different spells on those at the start of the expedition from their relics, like how we already had relic effects for changing Ashes of War on starting armaments, but it's sort of equivalent for spellcasters. The other relic effects that we know about are Nightfarer specific, and in particular they are tied to the new characters, so now let's go over the details that we know about them, with the note that this will just be all pre-release info that we had, and we'll probably have more detailed proper guides on each of these going out on the channel over the next couple of days. The Scholar then is a bit of an oddity. His main sort of identity is item usage and supporting other players through a mix of items themselves and his actual kit. His passive is called Bagcraft and lets him hold twice as many of each consumable item in each slot compared to the other Nightfarers, and it also gives him the ability to level up his items as well. This leveling up system happens in grouping, so using any pot will contribute to the level up progress of all pot items as a whole. Same for any bolus contributing towards the upgrade for all boluses, same for throwing knives, stuff like that. The second level version of an item just increases the raw effect of the items itself, so more damage for the damaging items, more FP gain for something like Starlight Shards. The third level effect adds bonus effects to the items. The examples that we've seen are lightning pots, triggering twice, essentially, fire pots, leaving a pool of damaging fire on the ground after exploding, things along those lines. The only real question mark with this is if it affects the non-consumable items, the tools, like Wraith Calling Bell. If you can scale it by leveling up, and if it doesn't be consumed because it's a tool, not an actual basic item, it will make him way more powerful than most people would expect if he has to rely on the ones that have limited uses. But we'll find out if that is the case quite soon, of course. Scholar's character skill then is called Analyze. You press the activation button to enter a stance. Any enemy or ally that is in the circle in front of you in your field of view will start charging up their own circular bar. The more charged the bar gets, the larger the effect it applies. You can cancel it early for a weaker version, but ideally you want the full charge, and this is judged in two major breakpoints. The base version of the skill, if you just were to launch it off instantly after starting it, is just the level 1 skill. After charging up to 50% of the circle filled, it goes to a level 2 charged version of the skill. Then the full circle filled up is level 3 charge. This charging effect happens faster the closer you are to the enemy as well, and you have two ways to actually activate the skill from this mode. One of them will use it to apply a debuff to all enemies that have been targeted. The other applies to yourself and any allies that were in your view circle as well. The version that you would apply to enemies is a debuff. Level 1 reduces enemies' damage. The second level enemy debuff is just a second stack of the damage reduction, so they deal even less damage. Then the third level enemy debuff gives them a debuff that makes them take around 60% increased damage from the next instance of damage they receive. Meaning if you pair this with a charged Wilder ultimate, for example, it can be a massive damage increase, but it does of course require coordination to actually make proper use of it. For the ally affecting version of this, level 1 charge is a stamina buff to your allies, level 2 charge is a second stack of that same stamina buff, and the level 3 charge gives you a little shield that blocks incoming damage for a very brief window after casting, and if the shield gets hit, it emits a shockwave that deals damage to the attacker. Then we also have Scholar's ultimate art, which is called Communion. This links together all nearby enemies so that they share damage when they are hit. It's not full damage sharing, but it looks more like 20% or so sharing, which is still quite strong for multi-target scenarios. And it also links all allies, so when any of you uses any sort of healing, it applies to the full party. So this is from the ground up. This character is just heavily built around group play. Though if you just love the idea of item spamming with this passive, you could of course play him solo as well, but it would limit the ability to use some of his other options in the kit. Aside from those parts of him then, the Scholar's preferred weapon type is thrusting swords, which of course work great with his scaling, as he can use Antspur Rapier, for example, for massive status application potential. On which note, here are his scaling stats: S in Arcane, so he's fantastic at just applying statuses in all forms, B in HP, FP in Stamina, C in Faith, Dexterity, and Int, and then a D in Strength, so realistically the bulk of your damage scaling with the Scholar will come from either statuses or from item usages, leveling up the items and then using them. Finally then, we've got this character-specific relic effects for him too, which will start dropping now as well. These are prevent slowing of character skill progress. This is a bit vague, but my personal interpretation of this is that it changes the skill so that it charges at the same speed regardless of how far away the enemy is, which would make it safer and more consistent to use if so. Allies targeted by character skill gain boosted attack is pretty straightforward. Apply character skill to yourself and your allies, everyone gets attack boost on top of the other buffs as well. Earn runes for each additional specimen acquired with character skill is a bit of an odd one. This seemingly just means you will get runes for any target that you have in the analyze circle when you apply debuffs or buffs, which has potential depending on the actual amount it offers, especially if you are going to want to be using runes to buy items on this character anyways. But it does really depend on the actual amount of runes that you get per analyze use. Then the final one is continuous damage inflicted on targets threaded by ultimate art, which I think is likely to be quite powerful, especially as they are all sharing damage with each other too. If this also shares the damage from this effect, that will be quite good, but again, this one mostly depends on the actual numbers behind it, the amount of damage that it will deal. Then we've got the other new character as well, who I think is about to become most people's new favorite, possibly myself included, because he just sounds like a load of fun, on top of also sounding very, very strong. And this is the Undertaker. We'll be explaining her in a slightly different order because of how she works, which is a little bit complex. Her character skill is called Trance. After you activate it, it gives you a buff that lasts for around 10 seconds, and during this period, it changes your dodge roll into being a dash step with extra distance and seemingly extra iframes on it too from the look. You can also move at the speed of the surge sprint, but without a stamina cost, so you can be massively fast without the stamina dangers of surge sprinting mid-combat. You get increased poise, so you can trade through attacks a little bit better too, and there is seemingly also a small damage boost as well that increases even further when you finish a light attack combo chain, though again the full buff only lasts for 10 seconds, so that will be tough to do in a lot of situations. As well, if you use the Undertaker's ultimate art, which is called Loathsome Hex, and you do it while trance is active, you get even more buffs for the remainder of trance's duration, including a general attack power buff, further movement speed increase, and she gains the same effect as Wilder's passive, which lets her shrug off a lethal blow if it happens while this effect is ongoing. As for what her ultimate art itself is, she pulls a bone out of her body and then flies forward with a lunging attack that stabs through the boss. The whole ultimate has iframes on it like the other ones do, it has massive distance that it can cover, and seemingly a decent turning arc as well, so it should be quite hard to just whiff it and miss it on locked on enemies unless you're like straight up out of the range, but again, the range on it is pretty freaking big. The ultimate art also just does a ton of damage in general, like especially if you consider the ease of hitting with it, it is arguably going to be the strongest pure damage ultimate moving forwards. That said, that makes her passive even better too, which is called Confluence. This lets the Undertaker use her ultimate art for free as a bonus charge anytime that any other Nightfarer uses their ultimate ability. An important note is, again, this doesn't like auto charge your ult to full, it is a pure bonus, it's purely extra. So if this happens when your ultimate art gauge is already full, you can literally use it twice in a row. As well, the game says that it can trigger off of certain enemy attacks as well, not just other Nightfarers using their ultimates, and the only example of this that we have seen in footage is seemingly this clip from the trailer of the Undertaker doing a dodge on a grab attack with the like Sekiro dodge animation on Estelle, glowing purple, and then launching into an ultimate art usage. From what we can tell, this passive has no cooldown on it. If the requirement is reached, the effect just activates every single time. But the other important note here is that this does not chain between Undertaker passives. The passive seems to activate when another Undertaker uses their full ultimate art, like their proper one with the cooldown and everything, but if the other Undertaker triggers the bonus one from the passive, you can't like infinitely chain passive ultimates between two Undertakers. It doesn't work that way. Undertaker's weapon type proficiency is hammers, and from footage, her light attack chain combo is shorter than normal hammer combos, being only 4 hits, and that may sound like a negative, but it does interact positively with the extra damage scaling effect from her character skill and with one of her relic effects too, which we'll get to in a moment. Her actual stat scaling is an A in strength and faith, so big weapons and incantations will be quite good on her for the most part, then B in HP, which isn't bad, C in FP and stamina, which means that incantations are again going to be slightly less good on her. It's a bit more awkward, but it's not unmanageable. Then she gets a D in dexterity and int, so really just no real scaling with those stats. Then as far as her character specific relic effects, she's got activating ultimate art increases attack power, which feels like a no-brainer, honestly. We don't know for sure yet if this does count for the bonus ultimate uses you get from her passive ability, but logically it probably does, and especially given the synergy of using her ultimate during her actual character skill, this should stack up to be a pretty big damage bonus if you sort of weave them all together. Contact with allies restores their HP when ultimate art is activated, so piercing through your allies with the spear thrust itself will give them health back. Attack power increased by landing the final blow of a chain attack, which to me sounds like the character skill effect, meaning that it would give you a timed attack buff for a short period of time after you fully finish a light attack chain combo. So decent potential depending on the actual numbers of it again, and then finally physical attacks boosted while assist effect from incantation is active for self, which seemingly just means if you have something like Golden Vow or Blessing of the Air Tree active, you will deal more physical damage. There are some questions for how this one will actually function, how it will scale, if it will stack in different ways, but just as a baseline concept, it will probably be quite solid if the numbers on it are decent to begin with. That just about does it for today then, everyone. A sort of recap of everything we know about the Forsaken Hollows DLC for Nightreign going into it, and a quick bit of information and knowledge about what you need to actually get into it at the very beginning when you launch the game. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.